Noon approached on September 1st, 1859, and British astronomer Richard Christopher Carrington was busy with his favorite activity, tracking sunspots, those huge regions of our sun darkened by shifts in its magnetic field. Carrington projected the sun's image from his telescope onto a plate of glass, stained the color of straw, which gave him a picture of the fiery globe almost a foot in diameter. The day's work went along as normal. Carrington charted his spots. Then he saw something unexpected. As he watched, two patches of intensely bright and white light broke out, in his words. At first, the astronomer thought his setup had a hole in it somewhere, but when he moved the telescope around, the patches stayed in the same place. So Carrington ran out to find someone to look at what he saw, but when they returned, the bright light had disappeared, he later wrote. Unfortunately, it wasn't gone. It was heading to Earth as a gigantic wave of energy. "12 hours later, two campers high up in the Rocky Mountains were sleeping in the open air when they were suddenly awakened. The sky had become filled with, quote, light so bright that one could easily read common print. The campers thought that dawn had arrived and started making their breakfast. Then one looked at their watch. It was midnight. The great auroral storm of 1859, as it was called, had begun. In New York City, San Francisco, Boston, and Chicago, thousands of stargazers wandered around the midnight streets, astounded at what they could see. A reporter for the New York Times wrote that when the aurora was at its greatest brilliancy, the northern heavens were perfectly illuminated. And he continued, the whole southern heavens were in a livid red flame. Streamers of yellow and orange shot up and met and crossed each other like the bayonets on a stack of guns. A newspaper in Cincinnati reported that to the east and to the west lay huge fields of luminous clouds tinted with a bright rosy flush, wholly unlike that produced by the rising sun, and even more beautiful. Here is an 1865 painting by the American artist Frederick Edwin Church titled Aurora Borealis, which some historians think was inspired by the storm. Meanwhile, telegraph operators around the world found their networks disrupted as their batteries short-circuited, and so they pointed their relay magnets to the sky and ran their operations on sunspot power. As the world's increasingly interconnected communications network buckled under the storm, scientists did what they could to record the incident, which lasted for about a week. These are magnetograms from 1859. They came from an electrical receiver pointed at the sky, generating signals that pushed a pen across recording tape. You can see the wildly fluctuating markings as solar electrical impulses pummeled the Earth. What did people think of this remarkable solar spectacle? Some interpreted it as a message from God. Others speculated that it came from volcanic eruptions or reflections from distant icebergs. Scientists, however, had been watching sun phenomenon by telescope since the days of Galileo in the early 17th century. Through the second half of the 19th century, they began to zero in on the link between solar events like sunspots and geomagnetic storms. These discussions continued through the 1940s. Eventually, they led to the identification of coronal mass ejections, huge bursts of mass and magnetic field energy from the sun provoked by the breaking and reforming of solar magnetic field lines. Orbiting space instruments photographed coronal masses in the 1970s, documenting the expulsion of matter from the solar system's energy source to our front door here on Earth. Nothing close to the great auroral storm has happened since 1859. But if it does, well, good luck to us. Here's hoping that if our cellular and Wi-Fi systems fail, we'll do just what our ancestors did. Look up at the sky, marvel at the sights, and try to have a good time. For centuries, most of us have worked with the comfortable notion that space is up there and we are down here. In the late summer of 1859, humanity discovered that, just like the gurus say, it's all connected.